Hi.
Hi, John. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Is my video going?
A little dark, I'm seeing that, but I don't know if I can do much about that. I got an overhead light here, so it's hopefully you can bear with my dark appearance on the screen.
You can close your panelist box as well.
Okay. Well, we're about ready to call this meeting to order. It's about, looking for my timeline here, 4:01. I'm Supervisor Glenn McGordy, and this is the ad hoc Mendocino County Drought Task Force Committee meeting with Supervisor John Haschak. John, I know you, there you are. So.
Okay, glad to be here, and thank you everyone for attending today. So I see we have quite a few participants, and hopefully we'll get some good information out there to you.
It may not be cheerful information, but hopefully it'll be accurate so that we can make some plans for moving forward as a county as we tackle this crisis in front of us. And it is a crisis for a lot of folks, and we want to be as proactive as we can. And to that end, of course, we've Josh Metz is our program manager for the Mendocino County Water Agency. And just kind of briefly, last week we did kind of a whirlwind tour to visit some of our water providers, the Anderson Valley Community Services District in Boonville, the Mendocino City Community Services District in Mendocino, Fort Bragg, City of Fort Bragg with their engineering department, and then finally Willits and their engineering department. And at each location, there was me and Josh plus the supervisor of the district. So we had to publicly note the meetings, and we thought we were just going to have a technical brief, but we ended up actually having, in some cases, a very active public discussion. In all locations, at least 15 to 20 people showed up to hear more about the drought, and we managed to get quite a bit of feedback. And kind of with that in mind, what I'd like to do is let Josh sort of report out in the different locations and what he heard. And he's putting on his intelligence glasses, so we're expecting a transformation.
Well, thank you, Supervisor. And hello, everyone. I'm seeing a lot of people that we've been meeting with and communicating with. And so thanks for making the time. It was quite an educational experience, certainly for me last week. And I know that also for all of us who were participating. So I'm going to reference a slide deck. I'm going to share this up here now. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, can you all see this PDF version
Yes.
of my slide deck? Okay, so I am, let me make sure it's going to advance properly. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about a number of items here, and really for folks who may be new to and wondering who I am, I'll give you a little bit more background about where I'm coming from and my relationship with the county at this point. We'll talk about what we've laid out from the standpoint of emergency response to the drought to a more strategic approach to the county water agency, give you some details on our site visit and what we found, and talk about some urgency items and recommendations that we're hoping this committee can make to the full board at their meeting next week. So this, of course, these are your supervisors. One thing I wanted to point out here is that we've been really working to standardize our approach to this committee. And so we've set on a monthly meeting, second Thursdays, 4 to 5:30, and you can see the dates for the remainder of the year that we would be holding this public meeting. There will obviously be a large number of other meetings going on. There already are meetings up and down the Russian River and various other places in the county. But for this task force, these are the dates that we'll be setting out for the meeting. A little bit about Regional Government Services, which is the joint powers authority that I work for. It's a public agency serving consulting, administrative, and project management needs of local governments. And we're comprised of advisors with deep expertise in local government process and really work closely in partnership with our client agencies. So when there was a need here to jump in and address the emergency needs from the drought and look at these strategic plans for the water agency, it was a great fit for me to get involved, and I am honored to be able to serve the county of Mendocino again. This is our strategic plan that we're working on to move ahead. The first phase, which is where we are now, is pretty focused on this drought emergency response. There's we found that there are significant needs, particularly in unincorporated parts of the county that are disconnected from main water systems. And so we're focused on supporting them, working with our local, regional, and state partners to meet those needs. We've had great response from the state water boards already. And I know there's a lot of other activities going on in the region and around the county. So that's kind of where we're focused now, as well as building up our information clearinghouse capacity to ensure that folks have the best, most current information about the status of water and what is being done to look towards a strategic approach over a much longer time period to be able to increase the county's resiliency in the face of increasingly dry climate and water insecurity. So there's a multi-phased approach which would occur over a period of about a year, by which time we would expect the Board of Supervisors would be in position to take an affirmative, well laid out approach to approving a new work plan and financing mechanism to support a sustainable county water agency. Supervisor McGordy and Hashak both referenced these visits we did last week, which there's a couple snapshots here of those meetings. We, as Supervisor McGordy mentioned, we went to Anderson Valley first and were welcomed there at the fire station with a lot of local concerned citizens and water professionals out to the Mendocino Community Services District, City of Fort Bragg, and Willits. I was also able to meet with the Redwood Valley Rancheria, and Supervisor McGordy and I also visited with Regina Water District, and I was provided also a great introduction to the Redwood Valley, I call it a reintroduction to the Redwood Valley, Lake Mendocino, Potter Valley facilities there with Howard Dashiell from the Department of Transportation. So, you know, the meat of what we found in these from these discussions, first of all, I was very impressed with the focus and engagement by local community leaders in the water area. In each community, there were people who met with us. They were well prepared. They had good information about the status of the situation in their community and were, you know, actively interested and engaged in working with us to find solutions. We did generally hear about dwindling supplies, in some cases pretty significantly dwindling. Also recognize that, you know, many of just the nature of these communities in the county as it's developed, there are significant amounts of areas with disconnected infrastructure, that is relying on wells, oftentimes shallow hand-dug wells, to supply water. And in a situation like we're in, that leads to you know, difficulty moving the water around from places that may have it to where it's needed. We also recognize it was quite an interesting series of conversations, particularly beginning out in the town of Mendocino, which has 420 members in the community services district, about 1,000 residents, and about 2,000 daily visitors there. And they depend heavily on importing water, hauling water down from other sources. In particular, the city of Fort Bragg is a main source for them during the dry season. And then following that, our meeting with the city of Fort Bragg and understanding their situation, it really highlighted the regional interdependency that already exists, whether it's acknowledged easily or not. So I'll talk a little bit more detail about that as we go along here. We did identify some real emergency response needs, and we came up with some policy kind of ideas for the board to consider. The main issue that I'll talk about today has to do with kind of fragile nature of the coastal communities. They are generally lack significant water storage and access to groundwater sources. While there is a history of study of possible sources, there's also a history of choosing to go different directions or not organize more significant investments in connected infrastructure. So that leads us to the moment here where the circumstance on the coast is that the Noyo River is one of the main water sources for not only the city of Fort Bragg, but points south and in areas in the unincorporated part of the county. So as that supply, and you can see this, there's a picture. This is Supervisor McGordy and Supervisor Jurdy from the coast looking down with John Smith, the Public Works Director at the city of Fort Bragg, at a pool here, which is the point where water from the Noyo River is brought into the city's water system through an intake there. And when we were there this day, the level of the water above the intake was about 2.7 feet. That is, there's a depth of water about 2.7 feet above that intake. This week, after a nice holiday weekend, I received an email first thing Tuesday from John Smith indicating that he had observed a significant drop in the level of the water in the river over the weekend, dropping below 1 foot of depth above that intake. So that really elevated the concern for the ability of the Noyo River to meet the continuing needs of the area south. And I think I have a slide here. Yes. So this is some data that John and his team maintained, and we were able to get this visualization through our collaboration with the state water boards. Alex Huang, who's on the line here, which has been really great in working with us to understand the nature of the problem. But this graph basically shows water sales from the city of Fort Bragg, and this is water sales to points south, that is outside the city boundary. There's a particular tank that is used for water haulers to fill from, and the city sells at a cost recovery rate to points south. These are all, you can see as the season goes through that the water demand increases in the fall and peaks out right about before the rains come. So these are all years 2020 and below. This is the year we're in now, 2021. And you can see that the rate of water sales from the city has dramatically increased already. And so that really points to an urgent need to source water meet the needs of the coast. And we have some options for that we're working on actively. They're not simple and involve some significant logistical considerations. And I would kind of, at this point, probably leave it at that, other than to say that it's an active thing that we're working on in close coordination with the state water boards and other partners. So in terms of policy recommendations following from this tour, actually let me step back a moment because there were other communities I'd like to talk about. Of course, critically is the city of Willits, who hosted us for a tour, a community meeting after our visit with the city of Fort Bragg. There was a large group at the city that were city residents and unincorporated area residents who wanted to hear what the county was doing around water. We met with them. I was pleased to hear from the city manager and his public works team that there had been significant strategic investments in diversified water portfolio for the city. They've got a number of groundwater wells as well as storage options working. And at the moment, they, among the communities that we visited, look to be in one of the stronger positions, although there is, significant concern about water use, and particularly in folks in outside the city limits, up in the Little Lake Valley and up in brook trails. There are concerns with dwindling surface storage, which is up at brook trails, and groundwater usage out in the area east towards Little Lake Valley. So that was the story there. Up in Redwood Valley, the Rancheria remains dependent on hauled water, but as a sovereign native nation, they have access to certain federal funds and are really looking to form partnerships with local agencies to find a fundable project. So that's something that at a strategic level we can continue to work with. And just a note on the selection of our tour last week, we did not make a specific meeting with the city of Ukiah, mainly because the city of Ukiah has done such a great job in establishing their strategic water portfolio. They've got diversion, water rights from the river. They've got a groundwater source, and they've got a recycled water source. So they're in a pretty strong position. One thing that would be a topic for later discussion is how that strength might be able to be extended to areas south and north through partnerships. So again, getting back to some policy recommendations, the nearest term option that we're working with the county council on now is for the board to consider a temporary permit waiver for storage tanks up to 5,000 gallons for domestic needs, and that's a board that would require board action and is kind of in draft now with county council. I did mention other things. So the coastal communities registered high on our list of areas of concern, and in particular, getting water to Fort Bragg. And I might just kind of describe what that is, if that's okay. Supervisor McGorty, go ahead and talk about the water by rail concept that we're working on as a concept.
Sure.
Yeah, so there's been a number of conversations ongoing, and I can tell you, moving water in an emergency situation is no simple task. There's been talk of barges floating in and various things like that. But the one that seems to have the most legs at the moment would involve a partnership with the Mendocino Railway and the city of Willits, whereby the railway would be outfitted with tanks that could, if the city of Willits and its community leaders were willing and took necessary actions at their council meetings, that there could be a supply transfer set up by way of the railway that would bring water to Fort Bragg, put that water in the municipal supply of the city, which would be made available for hauling to points south, including town of Mendocino and other outlying communities. So that's the main game-changing concept that we're working with right now. And we have active discussions, a lot of unanswered questions, but also a lot of engaged players. The Mendocino Railway has really been proactive in getting involved and supportive. And I just give a nod to John Smith for his work. You know, he's the public works director for the city of Fort Bragg, but he's taken quite a regional approach and working with Ryan Rhodes at the Mendocino Community Services District and other folks on the coast to really understand their role in helping those neighboring communities meet their water needs. Again, we did hear about, you know, there are concerns with groundwater supplies, particularly up in the area east of Willits. I also connected with folks up in Brown Valley, Covelo, who have concerns. So these are not simple problems to address, to answer. There needs to be some detailed study and kind of processes undertaken to really evaluate what those groundwater supplies are like. They're on our radar, and we're working to get better information so that you know, appropriate actions can be taken either by the county or certainly in partnership with our state partners. Really, you know, there is also a conversation that needs to be had about the way that water supplies need to be prioritized, and in particular, in conversations with the supervisors, the idea of these three priorities, kind of 1, 2, and 3 being strategically relevant here, are kind of direction we're leaning. You know, health and human safety has to be first. Certainly maintaining the county's economic vitality and environmental resiliency third. Finally, there is a real need to compile good water status data. That's the way that the state agencies make funding decisions and prioritizations. And so we'll want to be continuing to work on that with our local partners and getting those data ready to respond when there are funding needs and opportunities. So with that, I think I'm seeing a number of Q&A questions there. I would kind of close with these two main points of information. If you're not familiar, there's a drought hotline that's set up. If you're in a water urgent need situation, you can call that. You can also email drought@mendocinocounty.org. And then there is a resource put up by the state water boards, which is called mydrywatersupply.water.ca.gov/report. And if you are experiencing dry wells, we would request that you make the time to go on here and report your situation. Not only will that will aid in our conversations with the state, and also help them triage action. I know the governor had a meeting down in San Luis Obispo today where there were additional counties added to the drought emergency declaration that he made up in Mendocino back in April. And that reflects the widespread nature of this circumstance. And it also increases the competitive set for funds that Mendocino will need to be working with. So important to have the best information that we possibly can. So with that, that's my report, supervisors, and I hand it back to you for what's next.
So I think the best thing we can do is go to our question answer column here and just sort of go through it. If Supervisor Hasjack, you're okay with that?
Well, I do have one point I wanted to make, and I thank Josh for that report. Certainly, there's concern all throughout the county, so I wanted to make sure that what the board is looking at as far as the waiving the permitting of 5,000 gallon water tanks would be throughout the county, not just one specific area.
Correct.
And so I wanted people to know that we're looking at all the areas of our county. And certainly there's issues, Redwood Valley, up to Round Valley, and all points. So.
And I'd also like to make the point that if your community wasn't mentioned, it's not because we don't care about your community, it's because we haven't had a chance to really do a more extensive field survey, which we hope to do in the coming weeks, because we know there's other things going on in other places. So the one thing that we don't have a good handle on in Mendocino County is our water resources, because most years we don't have to worry about it. It's when the water supplies get tight, when it doesn't rain, that this is when it really comes to bear, that we have to have strategies for coping with water shortfalls. And as I've said before, in the olden days, we always felt like it rained enough that we had all the water we needed for the year. Well, we can't count on that anymore. And there's going to be years like the two we've just experienced. There'll be years where we have lots of water, but we have to kind of start thinking about putting up water for more than one season. And when we do have water shortfalls, have some kind of storage. So this whole concept of water resiliency is something that I'm encouraging to become a policy of Mendocino County. And I'm not finding any resistance from other board members or people inside of the executive office. So it becomes a question of us finding a pathway forward. Okay, so question and answers. Josh, you want to field them?
Well, I'll do my best. Let's see what we have here. First one would be from Janny Shepard. Lake Mendocino is losing water at an alarming rate. As of 7 a.m. Wednesday morning, the lake held 29,719 acre-feet of water. That's not a lot. Does the Board of Supervisors Drought Ad Hoc Committee have a plan in the event that the lake empties before the seasonal rains begin? Well, that I would say, the water out of Lake Mendocino is managed by the Army Corps of Engineers and the state, in collaboration with the state water boards. And so I would say, is there anybody from those agencies that might like to address that question?
So I know that we have Elizabeth Solomon on the line, and I think she is working for one of two agencies that presently have rights to the remaining water behind the dam, which is Sonoma County Water Agency and the Russian River Flood Control District. Beth, if you'd like to address the issue, I think would be great.
Just saying, I'm happy to do that. Hi, everyone. Josh, could you repeat the question real quick?
Sure. Lake Mendocino is losing water at an alarming rate. As of 7 a.m. Wednesday morning, the lake held 29,719 acre-feet of water. That's not a lot. Does the Board of Supervisors Drought Ad Hoc Committee have a plan in the event that the lake empties before the seasonal rains begin?
Okay, great. Thank you. So there is a representative from the State Water Resources Control Board staff that is assigned to the Russian River watershed. We meet weekly with a steering committee of major water managers in the Russian. That would be the Upper Russian through Mendocino County and Northern Sonoma, as well as the Lower Russian in Sonoma County. We watch so we're on top of it. The goal is to have at least 20,000 acre feet by October 1st still remaining in the lake. Extensive measures have been taken by the State Water Resources Control Board and water leaders in the watershed to basically budget out the amount of water that will be available to maintain that 20,000 acre feet. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but that's basically what's happening is the State Water Board is working with us to make sure we don't drain the lake before the rainy season. That 20,000 acre feet will provide some carryover for meeting human health and safety requirements until such time as it rains again, which let's keep our fingers crossed it will be soon. I'm happy to follow up with any other questions.
Well, I'll see that you asked the next one, which is about announcing the GSA public meeting next Thursday night. So maybe you can also announce that meeting.
Len, would you like to take over as the GSA board chair to announce
Sure.
that? Thanks.
So Beth and I both worked together on the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which is responsible for managing groundwater in the Ukiah Valley. And the good news is we have groundwater to manage. So it's one of the really tremendous aquifers we have in Mendocino County, one of the few. So we've been working on a plan to make sure that we don't overdraft the basin. And it's taken quite a lot of research, and we've been working on this project for multiple years now, and we are to the point where we have a plan. And next Thursday evening, I believe it's at 5 o'clock, we're going to kind of roll out the plan to the public at Lions Park in Redwood Valley in public, so that people can come for presentation done on poster boards. So there's not going to be any PowerPoints or anything to fall asleep through. And it's a chance for people to hear about the plan, and if they haven't already, and we'll be sharing more information with that through other groups, including the Mendocino County RCD and a Farm Bureau, and if you're interested, show up. It'll be a chance for an interesting discussion. So in general, Ukiah Valley is in pretty good shape. It's a naturally wonderful aquifer, and it's bolstered also by the fact that we have Eel River water flowing through it. And we have what's called a conceptual model of how the aquifer works, what are the inputs and what are the outputs. And the bottom line is that for us to manage the resource to state requirements, I think we're not going to have too much trouble doing it. Okay, next question.
Right, so the next question is there a way to gather water sales data in other parts of the county that are not directly from a city or water district? Well, so, the source of the water, the sold water, is really the place where water sales data can be collected. Collecting data and managing data, while individual points are somewhat trivial, actually compiling records and organizing them and getting them somewhere useful is more involved. We're lucky that John Smith and his colleagues have done that, and I know the other water managers and districts and cities are doing that as well. It's more challenging in outlying areas, and I would perhaps pass it to the supervisors if they want to address that in any more depth.
Well, I think that the question really is, how do we know what's going on with all the wells that are dug throughout the county? And people might be selling their individual property water, on the market, filling up trucks and hauling it away. So is there any way of monitoring that? I think that's what the question is trying to get at. And basically, we don't have much data on that.
Josh has been looking at that. There's been some discussion about maybe having a county-wide program for reporting water hauling and sales and permitting trucks. So Josh, if you just want to give us a brief discussion of what you found out so far, that'd be great.
Sure. I mean, I think the real question here is, how important is it to get water hauling data, and what is legally feasible, and what is the board capable, willing to do in terms of making policy. But one solution that we are exploring is basically a county permit for hauling water. Any operator that would be working in Mendocino County would be required to have a license or permit for hauling water. And part of that, part of the permit fee would be used to register into a fleet management system that would be able to track the use pattern of the individual truck and link it to individual water sales. So there would be then data compiled that could be used to evaluate these questions of where water is being sourced and where it's being sold. There's a number of unanswered questions there. And I think we're working, through county council to explore what's possible.
So right now, Josh, what is the procedure for people who want to haul water, particularly potable water, in terms of licensing?
Well, what I know is we do have a record of state licensed haulers. The best record I've seen was actually a little bit dated, a few years back. I think there's 5 total licensed haulers in the county on that list. And, you drive up and down the highway, you can see signs for dial his number and get some water. So I think kind of, those haulers have to have sources to get the water from. And, depending if you're hauling potable or non-potable water, that, depends on, what kind of permitting your vehicle might need. But for the most part, it's pretty, open market sort of conditions.
Well, there's no question that the cannabis industry and water hauling are considered a problem in some areas, and the new cannabis ordinance that we just passed prohibits using trucked water to grow, just so that's on the record for people. I as a supervisor, I get communications from people not necessarily in my district that really object to water trucks, and in my district too, and particularly people who have private roads find that it's really an inconvenience to have big heavy trucks going up and down the road because they do a lot of damage to it. I don't know, Supervisor Hasjack, if you want to add anything to that, because you live kind of in the center of the water hauling universe in Mendocino County. So your thoughts?
Certainly that's a huge problem. People are seeing it, and I think the new ordinance, does ban water hauling for cannabis. So we're working on, trying to take care of that problem. And, finding the source of it, where people are getting their water, that's a big issue. So
not simple, for sure. Not simple.
Not simple. And by the way, don't get us wrong. Hauling water is also important for people who are water insecure. And so the town of Mendocino and the area south of Fort Bragg are totally dependent on water haulers. So it's not like we're against water hauling. It's just we want things to be legal, and we don't want to be damaging people's aquifers that are kind of shallow and limited. And a shout out to all the wonderful water haulers yesterday who on the spot showed up for the fire that was going on in Redwood Valley, and they all got together, and the fire was going down the Forsyth Creek channel, and they all turned their water trucks on it and they stopped the fire. So they really provided a real community service, and I thank them for that emergency effort. So it could have been way worse if they hadn't been there. So we need water trucks in our community. We're not against them. We just want to be sure that they're regulated in some way so that the rest of the community isn't feeling like they're being taken advantage of in some way, either through using water inappropriately or putting up with dust and noise that they don't need to.
Yeah, so in our meeting in Willits, for example, you know, we heard that about these concerns and really some of the issues of, you know, water trucks and weights on outlying roads and bridges. Those are engineering and infrastructure really concerns that do have relevance to things like fire response capabilities and other things. So very complex issues, and you know, we're like Supervisor McGordy said, you know, I'm not anti-water hauling at all. I'm just offering up solutions that to be considered and evaluated, and hopefully can lead to some, you know, data. I think the data is really quite important. You know, it would help reduce the kind of you know, a lot of the question marks if there's real information to be you know, just looked at. So I do see there's a hand raised. Would it be a good time to take that from Randy Burke? Is this a good time for that, or should we hold public comment till after we?
Let's go through our written questions first, and then if we have time, we'll do the public comments and questions. Okay.
Sure. So I'll consider that one answered. There is a note to please encourage representatives from the press to cover what businesses and residents can do to reduce their water use. Resources can be found on the county drought webpage. There is a web page which you can get to from the homepage of mendocinocounty.org. In the header, there's a link to the drought information page. You can also just type in mendowater.org. It'll get you to the same page. And please do that. You know, we need to be sharing information about resources and ways to conserve. It's a really, you know, all hands on deck situation. You know, we're working to scale up some of our information program. We maintain a Facebook page with occasional posts on relevant information. I've also started a new Twitter feed at mendowater.org that kind of sharing resources from both within the county and other counties around the state for folks to plug into. So feel free to look there as well.
Okay, we have a note from Phil Williams just saying, well said, Josh, especially regarding finding ways to exploit Ukiah's position to benefit our region. From Phil Williams, who is the water attorney for the city of Ukiah. Thank you for that comment, Phil.
Thanks for the comment, Phil. We got another one here. It says, we've had 2 years of diminishing rainfall, and there's nothing in the long-term forecast to indicate the rainfall rates will not continue to diminish. Is anyone looking at what to do when there is no more water to manage? Well, that I would put under the category of strategic planning and initiatives that we would need to undertake through a re-established county water agency. Infrastructure projects and water projects in particular are long duration, multi-year, very expensive projects, generally speaking. And so there needs to be, you know, substantial planning and fund development financing mechanisms put in place. I mean, luckily there's a state budget surplus at the moment, and the governor's office is, you know, focused on this a next series of our challenges of our time, you know, from the wildfires to the pandemic to the drought. We just can't seem to get enough these days. But you know, those are the reasons to do things like increase storage capacity during winter high flows that may hopefully will return periodically, build the infrastructure to capture some of that. Look at pipeline connections between districts or from sources to where people are living. I mean, all of these activities could be the subject of the water agency's body of work, as well as just continuing to increase our ability to work with less water. It's maybe not an exciting future, but it actually, at least under the trends that we're in now, appears to be, you know, potentially a likely future. So yeah, we all need to be thinking about that. Would you supervisors like to add any more to that comment?
Well, you know, I've told all of my viticulture friends who grow vineyards is that plan, you know, as you plan your vineyards into the future, make sure they use less water, because water is becoming scarcer in California, not only because it's not raining as much, but there's more urban use, and it's prioritized for urban use and for you know, fisheries and wildlife. So agriculture's got to learn to do a better job, even though we're already doing really good, in my opinion. We can improve. So there's things we can do to in terms of irrigation technology and drip irrigation, maximization, and new genetics for rootstocks. And I'm not talking GMOs. I'm just talking traditionally bred rootstocks that can thrive with less water. And I think that's the direction agriculture's got to go in California. Okay, so let's keep moving with our questions.
Okay, the next one is the railroad from Willits to Fort Bragg's a great idea, but I thought that it was cost prohibitive and isn't the tunnel collapsed. It would be great to use that to get traffic off Highway 20 as well. Well, what I can tell you is that while there is a tunnel collapse, it's west of the point where the water tanks would need to be to get the water in the Fort Bragg water system. So that's good news. That is, the train could haul water from Willits to the input source and get it in the system. Now, there are a number of complexities yet to be resolved, perhaps chief among them, you know, local political action to support this transfer of water. It's not a simple consideration, but we're hopeful that we can find a regional solution and make this work. We're working on this actively.
Josh, Josh, you had talked about the timeline for going to the city council. So when is that city council meeting in Willits when this will be proposed?
Yeah, my understanding is that the next Willits council meeting is July 28th, I believe, is the date, and that would be when the council would have sort of a formal item. That's of course subject to the city managers and his council's, you know, desire to put it on their agenda and do all of those things. But so far, it's been you know, productive partnership, and the indications are that we'll be able to get that on their July 28th agenda.
Thank you.
So stay tuned for the railroad. Okay, here we go. There are thousands of Mendocino inhabitants who do not live in cities. They rely on a mix of groundwater and surface water diversion. But WRCB is chopping the diversion rights even when there is water to divert. Groundwater is hit and miss, quite often miss. What is being done to address water needs of those not included in water districts? Well, I think generally what we're trying to do this year is take pretty significant dramatic action with support from private sector partners and our state partners and local jurisdictions to get a water supply, at least to coastal communities. And within the interior, at the moment, there appears to be water resources that are accessible via hauled trucks. So if you're in a situation where your wells are dry, that would be your next best option. Over the longer term, improving transmission capabilities and off-stream storage and all of that are good options. And, you know, significantly, there's a need, I would say, to increase storage capacity at Lake Mendocino by way of raising the dam, Coyote Dam. That's a significant infrastructure project with a number of complexities to overcome. But those are kind of the actions that would lead to real change, more water in dry times. Glenn, do you have or Supervisor McGorty or Hashak, do you have other comments on this?
No, so one of the things that we did back when we were facing some challenges with frost water usage is along the Russian River is the Natural Resource Conservation Service went into a program called the Ag Water Enhancement Program, and a series of small lined reservoirs were installed on a cost share basis that really increased the water supply so that we didn't have an instantaneous drawdown when all the frost pumps went on. We were concerned about spawning fish. So it was a very successful program, and it was pretty cost effective. I could see things like that being done perhaps on the coast in places like Casper and having those connected for water supplies. Josh also alluded to studies that have already been done on the coast, looking at places like the Little River Airport as a possible well field because there isn't a lot of wells around it. It might be a place where water could be extracted and used. The city of Willits, they're looking at perhaps acquiring water from the Boy Scout camp. So these are all ideas. I mean, everything is on the table right now to increase our water security. And that the important thing to do is to plan. And you look at the city of Ukiah is a very good example of how they planned from the last drought and how much they've gotten done in terms of investment of new wells that tap deeper water resources. And they also put in the Purple Pipe program that recycles water up to 700 acre feet, which is a lot of water. So those are just some examples. Supervisor Haschak, do you have any other thoughts or ideas of things that you see going on that might help us through a water crisis?
Well, I thought you had a lot of great ideas, and we are looking at the Boy Scout Camp Lake up in Willits as a possibility of getting some water from there. The whole deal with the forbearance of water with the water tanks, we're looking at programs that might be county-wide for acquiring and, looking at the permitting process and those kind of things that might make it easier for people to get, water storage capacity.
Yeah, and I do that myself because I have wells that go dry in the summer, even though I'm next to the Russian River. I just don't have good water bearing strata. And I pump in the wintertime when my wells are perfectly sound, and I store water for the summer. And I think that that's a strategy a lot of us really have to do. Okay, let's go back to our questions.
Okay, there's one here that says, I haven't heard any mention of the South Coast. What are you doing here in Gualala? Well, let's see. I know there is a project, a water storage project that's being pursued down in that part of the county in collaboration with the state water boards. I don't have a lot of detail on that other than an email that I saw earlier today with sort of positive indications. There may be someone on the call here who could speak to that a little further. If anyone would like to do that, feel free to. I think I'm not seeing anyone jump out for that one. Steve, perhaps from the county, do you have anything to say on that? I would say, folks running dry on the coast, if the circumstances, if you're absolutely dry, then I think you're sourcing, if we can work out some additional supplies to be brought out to Fort Bragg, that might be one option, and we'll continue looking for other options as we go forward. It's just a challenging situation. Glenn, do you have more to say?
Yeah, I did have a conversation with Richard Shoemaker, who is working on special projects now, but he was the city manager of Point Arena, and Bill Hay Water Company, which pumps underflow from I'm getting which river runs through there, the Garcia. The Garcia River in Point Arena seems to be in pretty good condition, and at this point, Point Arena is fairly water secure, and they're also able to sell water to people who are in the immediate vicinity if they need it. So that part of the South Coast is doing good. Let's keep moving with our questions so that we can get through as many as possible.
Okay, so the next one is, I've got a question about the Potter Valley project that diverts Eel River water into the Russian. Steve Elliott, SOUP of the Potter Valley Irrigation District, told me about a month ago that the diversion might be cut off in mid-August because the level of Lake Pillsbury would become low enough to risk clogging the outlet pipe. Do you have any more recent information about this?
Well, this is an ongoing concern. Let's see, we have Beth here. So Beth, do you have any updated information? I know that the water releases have been cut quite a bit back. Potter Valley will have some water but not all their water. Beth, what else do you have to add to the conversation?
Yes, thank you, Glenn. I'll offer that that PG&E is holding a drought working group task. It's made up of stakeholders impacted by releases from Lake Pillsbury and the Potter Valley project. We meet every other week. We receive updates on water storage, quality, temperature, etc. Potter Valley Irrigation District, from the last meeting, it was noted they have used 50% of this year's allocation, which is greatly reduced than their normal allocation. And yes, it's true that at some point they would have to turn off the diversion essentially if the Lake Pillsbury got too low. But similar to Lake Mendocino, there's a water sort of budget of what's remaining and how that will be released until the rains begin again.
Bring back the rains. That's what we need to be doing, our rain dance here.
Yes.
Okay. Talked to the skunk train manager this past weekend. He stated Willits may not have water to send over. Is the barge idea being looked at more closely? Yeah, it is true that there is no formal agreement between Willits and the relevant stakeholders about supplying that water. That's an active conversation and is not yet certain by any means. So yes, we are looking at all possible alternatives there, but at the moment, we're working hard to see if this railway option is viable.
So just to fill you in, as far as the barge water idea goes, is that originally the Community Services District in Mendocino was approached by the state on the idea, and of course, there's no place to receive water in Mendocino, so Noyo Harbor might be a possibility depending on the size of the barge. And what would have to happen is A, they'd have to have a water source, B, a barge that can fit into Noyo Harbor, C, they would have to have a portable water treatment plant because they couldn't take just the barge water, even if it's potable, and receive it into the city of Fort Bragg's municipal system. They couldn't. Where they actually treat water is further up the river, and they couldn't get there with the barge. It's just a trickle at this point. So they would have to treat it right at the harbor and then connect into fire hydrants and send it on its way. So all these things take time, and this is what's getting us all kind of worried, is because we think within 60 days we're going to be at a really critical point. So that's why we're hot on the trail on this, trying to come up with solutions.
Yeah.
Okay, next question, I guess, is for me. Another comment?
Well, I understand that Randy Burke is on the line here who can comment on the Gualala situation. So if we would like to kind of revisit that topic just for a moment here, Randy, do you have anything to add on the status of water in Gualala?
Status of water is underflow currents in the watershed for the Sea Ranch, Bill Hayes, and the Walla Water Company. We're working on a grant funding project right now with George Rao and the Division of Drinking Water and the Department of Water Resources.
Great. To
get a project going where we could store 220,000 gallons of water on a surface water flow to take the pressure off the North Guala watershed. So we're getting there, we think. It's been a hard row.
Yeah.
A lot of problems going on with it in COVID and other reasons, but
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Great. Thank you for providing that update, Randy. Maybe you and I can connect again offline, just so I have we're connected on the Gualala Coast status of things. So thank you for providing that update.
I will say this, that Steve Dunicliffe from the county and Ted Williams and the Mendocino County Rural Community District or Conservation District has been extremely helpful in our efforts.
Oh, great. Great. Yes, glad to hear Joe Scriven and
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I guess the next question is for me, huh? So what actions is the county planning specifically to respond to the two-basin solution? Well, we're meeting monthly with the Inland Water and Power Commission, which Janet Pauley heads up. And in fact, when this meeting is over, in about, I'll have to be back on Zoom at 6 o'clock to take on the next meeting. This is really water day for me. That'll be my third meeting of the day. So we're in a situation now where we are applying for grants to study whether this is feasible. And for those of you who don't know about it, the Eel River water is diverted via the Potter Valley project and has been critically important to filling Lake Mendocino, and the whole economy that's built up between Potter Valley to Healdsburg depends heavily on this diverted water. There are people from Humboldt County, Friends of the Eel, and cow trout in particular that take exception to having the Scott Dam and Van Arsdale Dam, saying that it's inhibiting the fishery, that it would be a much stronger salmon-mounted fishery if those structures were gone. And Congressman Huffman came up with an idea of what's called the two-basin solution, where basically Scott Dam comes down, we divert water during the winter, then we would store it possibly in a newly rebuilt Lake Mendocino that could hold more water, then pump it back up to Potter Valley in the summertime when they need it. So it would be strictly a winter diversion, kind of a forbearance kind of approach to doing things. But you know, there's all sorts of problems with this idea. The biggest one being that no one's really talked to Lake County and the people who live around Lake Pillsbury. What do they think of it? Because I'm pretty sure they don't think much. And that would have to be addressed before anything happened. The other thing is that under the plan, there would have to be a flow of at least 1,000 cubic feet per second in the Eel River before the diversions could take place in the wintertime. So these last 2 years, I don't think that there was a single day that we got over 1,000 cubic feet per second flow. So that means that we really wouldn't have much of a diversion available to us to augment the water in Lake Mendocino. So the point we need to make on this is that essentially PG&E has told us they won't relicense this. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this. Janet Pauley should be here to really explain it. So this all evolves around PG&E abandoning their license and trying to come up with a way to keep the Potter Valley project functioning. The electricity that we get from this diversion is probably less important than the water we get from this diversion. So we're in the process of studying whether it's feasible for this some kind of a joint powers authority to take over the project and have it function in a way that gets us both water and electricity, at the same time restoring fisheries habitat on the Eel River. So it's quite a tall order, and it's going to take a lot of studying and many years before we really resolve whether it's feasible or not.
I'm seeing you got your wish answered, and Janet appeared on the screen here.
Oh,
so
Janet, thank God. Go ahead, Janet, if you should talk. Can we unmute you? There she is. I know Janet's connection is often iffy, so are you there, Janet? We're not hearing you, Janet. I don't, are you on computer or are you on phone?
she's trying to connect to the audio there, it looks like. Let's see. Well, maybe we can, just in the interest of time.
We can circle back if Janet is connected, but let's go on to the next question.
What policies is the board considering to ensure domestic and agricultural water conservation?
Well, I would say getting your water rights curtailed is a pretty good way of ensuring conservation, because when you can't divert water anymore, you're conserving. We have none, and I'm among those who don't. So that's pretty extreme. Apart from that, almost everybody I know who irrigates vineyards uses drip irrigation, and they also use deficit irrigation, which is a program where you kind of hold back your amount of water that you use until you stress the vines some early in the season to slow down their growth and reduce the overall amount of foliage, and then you start to irrigate, which normally would be about this time. So that's a pretty common practice. And we see the same thing happening with other crops too, where people are being much more efficient and improving how they apply water. So
Also, yep, go ahead, Supervisor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we just saw at the beginning of the program here today, we're looking at this policy to waive the, permitting fees or the permit for tanks, water tanks of 5,000 gallons. So we're looking at some of those things that we can do to make it easier for people to store water. I think that there's a voluntary 20% reduction of water consumption countywide that we're promoting. And I think that each individual water district has certain restrictions. Redwood Valley has certainly restrictions on their water usage. Mendocino, we've heard about, and Laytonville does on theirs. I think with the 42 different water agencies we have, it's very hard to control and collaborate. But that's what we're trying to do with this water agency that we're forming, is get more collaboration with and communication between all the water agencies so that we know what we're doing, and it's a concerted, coordinated effort.
Yes, and if I might just add too, regarding getting information out, the board is also has a contract with the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District to do public information efforts around the inland, the Russian River, and now the county. And so that's kind of an ongoing effort to educate people about the importance and the need to implement conservation activities.
Okay, so Janet, are you able to communicate with us?
Can you hear me, Glenn?
Yay, yes.
Oh, the wonders of technology. I just really quickly wanted to say I thought you did a really good job of summarizing what's happening with the Basin Solution. And there are a lot of questions. We are trying to find funding for the studies that need to be accomplished to find out if we really do have, could have a reliable water supply with a run of the river type of a scenario. So we're a ways away. Again, funding for these studies is of paramount importance right now, and we're working in that direction, both looking at state funding, federal funding, and hopefully potentially some local funding with a ballot measure that we're going to be working on here very shortly for the 2022 ballot. It will probably be addressing more than one water supply issue, of which we all know there are many. Things from not only the Potter Valley Project license and that diversion, but also Lake Mendocino, raising Coyote Valley Dam, probably helping to fund some of the SGMA work that's ongoing with groundwater basin, and then any other water infrastructure projects that maybe we haven't even envisioned yet, but we need to be looking at it, and this drought should be spurring us in that direction. So thank you, Glenn, for being involved, and we'll be on the next call after a little while.
Yes, we will. Thank you for calling in, Janet, and explaining things a little better than me.
No, you did great. Thanks, Glenn.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I would just kind of add on the question of funding. It's pretty much the fundamental question, and finding a mechanism to establish sustainable revenue to support the development of water infrastructure for the county is critical. And while there are state and federal sources for funding, they all need local match funds. So if I'm not sure exactly what would be in the measure that Janet just mentioned, but I would be an advocate for the county residents to really look hard at that and consider supporting whatever good ideas in that regard come forward, because I think there are a few good examples of strategic investments that have been made in the communities around the county. And I think there's a lot that could be done to make, for a more resilient future in this regard. Okay, going back to our questions here. I'm just seeing a note from Alex Huang from the State Water Resource Control Board that I think is worth noting. He's been a great partner, really doing a lot of number crunching with us and helping us advance these different ideas on water sourcing. But he's responding to the barge idea. He says it was his idea and he investigated. He called the harbor, and it's not feasible. The largest boat they could fit is about 70 feet long. The smallest tanker ships start around 100 to 200 feet long. For now, the use of Noyo Harbor would be a backup option for bringing in bottled water in case there's a road rail blockage or something. Noyo Harbor Marina has a hoist that can offload the cargo. So we're hoping it doesn't come down to individual bottled water units, but thank you, Alex, for jumping on that and helping us look at these options. I'll also note that Joe Scriven has a comment here that says, for those interested in receiving the weekly water conservation message from the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District, please send an email to drought@mcrcd.org. So those are two of our partners that are working hard on these issues. Kind of going back to the top, I'm seeing, are business licenses required for water truck deliveries? And if so, can we start with that data? That's a great question that I need to get answered. Does anyone have an answer to that one from the county?
Well, I think that's one of the things we're looking at, is how we can get kind of control over the water trucks of, knowing what they're doing and where they're going. So that's a project for the Board of Supervisors with County Council.
Yeah, so we'll look into that one, Jessica. Thank you. Go ahead.
And we are having discussions. I just want everyone to know we're not just thinking about it. We're actually in discussion. So it's on our radar.
Yep, and there's a follow-on one about water haulers. Are water haulers required to be inspected by county health for appropriate health standards?
If they're hauling water for domestic use, yes, and the state actually regulates that, and they have to go through an application or inspection. I can't tell you with certainty if environmental health inspects them regularly or anything like that. It's just something I don't know.
Yeah, the list that I have of approved water haulers is from the California Department of Public Health, Food and Drug Branch. So I would defer to kind of the state licensing process at that point, but I think really we probably would benefit by looking closely at these questions. Are there business licenses required, and how might we begin to kind of get a handle on that so that we have more kind of detailed information.
Yeah, and the trucks that are actually licensed for hauling water for people have a lot of requirements in terms of being stainless steel, and they have to be sanitized, and there's numerous things that they can and can't do in terms of hooking hoses or using them for dusting down roads. That they have to go through certain processes if they're going to switch. But in general, they're stainless steel food grade tanks with stainless steel fittings, and they're special equipment. So if it's Joe's Midnight Water Company delivering to you, and he shows up in a rusty old tank, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a certificate from the state.
Okay, I'm seeing another one here. At the end of the day, isn't the major question and solution here, how do we get Coyote Dam raised so that we can store more water to make our communities more resilient? With climate change, population increase, etc., doing a better job irrigating our ag crops will not get us where we need to be.
Yeah, well, it's a long process to get the dam raised, and if Janet is still in the vicinity, she has worked on this and she's the authority, so she can tell you exactly where we are, because it's pretty amazing how much time's gone by since we started the process again. Is Janet still on the line, or has she left?
She's back.
Glenn, I'm here. Still, it's a miracle. Yeah, the Coyote Valley Dam raise is something that was envisioned a long time ago. In fact, right after the original dam was built, it was authorized by Congress. And it sort of, what originally was supposed to happen was after Warm Springs Dam was built, we were supposed to come back and raise Coyote Valley Dam 36 vertical feet, which would have doubled its gross capacity. That didn't happen, obviously. And in 2005, Inland Water and Power Commission approached the Corps and asked them if we could reinvigorate that idea, and we started a feasibility study. Just really quickly, that fell away because of the lack of funding. But now Congressman Huffman has put this sort of front and center for the Army Corps. It's actually back in their budget for 2023. As Glenn mentioned, it would require a match. I think Josh also mentioned that as well. Any kind of project like this requires a 50-50 match. So to actually do the feasibility study, we would have to come up with local funds. I think there may be other options here as well that we can explore moving forward, particularly since our vulnerability is so clear now with this natural drought. We obviously have the capability of raising that dam in terms of all the easements that are in place, the borrow ground. The dam was built to sustain that increased height. So a lot of the groundwork was done way back in the 50s. Needs to be reviewed, of course, but it's possible that we could get there, and maybe not in as long a time as we actually think.
Janet, in terms of the increase, how much water could be stored there that over the present capacity?
Well, it actually doubles the gross capacity. So what are we, about 112,000 acre feet now? It could double that. The actual firm yield, I believe, and I could be wrong, there's probably folks on the phone that have this answer at their fingertips, but I think it would increase our gross yield by something around 25 to 30,000 acre feet. But all that's negotiable as time goes on. And now that we have forecast informed reservoir operations, we're much better at figuring out how much water we can actually store in that reservoir and still protect people downstream from flood damage. So it becomes much more of a water supply reservoir than its primary function, which has always been flood control. So different time, different technology, a lot of things that need to be discussed, but I'm comfortable that we could come to a place with a raise of Coyote Valley Dam that would really improve our water supply reliability locally.
And Janet, I have a question. This is John. Lots of people ask me, why can't we dredge the bottom of the lake to give it more capacity now that it's pretty dry?
Well, we've looked at that over the years too. And the results were that the sediment pool that the lake was designed to hold had a 50-year life, and it is full. The sediment pool at the bottom of the lake is full, and there continues to be sediment coming in. The cost of removing the sediment that you see in the picture behind John is absolutely exorbitant. We had some initial numbers that showed that actually raising Coyote Valley Dam 36 vertical feet might cost around $300 million, but removing that sediment, one dump truck load at a time, and finding a place to put it might cost somewhere near that amount. I don't know if that's still true in today's dollars, but it is something that obviously it just seems like a simple solution, but apparently it is not a simple solution. There may be some issues with the quality of the materials in that sediment, for one thing. So another thing to look at, but I think quite a while ago we pretty much dismissed the idea of taking maybe 5,000 acre feet out of the lake worth of sediment, because that's what you would realize in increased storage, as opposed to raising the dam and having some significant storage increase.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think just listening to you, Janet, and understanding a bit about infrastructure projects and water supply projects and things like that. I mean, these are long lead, strategic planned projects that have multiple phases and steps and involve multiple agency partners and significant funding. That would be the benefit of having a well-formed and professionally organized and operated county water agency to support and connect the local different activities and be a kind of a hub of information. So I think that's what the supervisors have been, getting behind and kind of with, I think, Supervisor McGordy and Hashak's lead being able to contemplate. So I'm, it's folks like Janet and Elizabeth and the other water professionals in the county that, are really being leaders and would help the county really get in the game and become a effective partner in making some of these things happen over the long term.
Josh, I'll just finish by saying about in 2005, when we started the effort to resurrect the feasibility study with the Army Corps of Engineers, I would go sort of door to door talking to people about what the benefit of that would be. And one of the questions I always received was, well, how long would that take? And someone said to me one time, I think it would take 20 years. And my reply was, well, it could take 20 years or more, but when would you like the 20 years to start?
Yeah.
And here we are in 2021, and we're not any closer. So you're right. We need to plan.
Yeah. And, I think a key point, and perhaps to a little bit more on that idea of a tax measure, when my understanding is that when Coyote Dam was first put up, there was an opportunity for Mendocino County to be a partner in the project funding and secure water resources that could be wholesaled to local purveyors, much like Sonoma Water does. And that there was a sort of a missed opportunity there. And I think looking to the future, and certainly looking to the future of a sustainably funded county agency, if we could get our ducks in a row to become a partner in the raising, that would be one mechanism by which we could, establish some of that funding over the long term to support ongoing water resiliency projects.
Well, you're right. If back in the 50s, when this all started, Mendocino County ended up relatively reluctantly spending about $630,000 as our share of raising Coyote Valley Dam, and Sonoma County spent about $4 million, and that's why they have the lion's share. And I know from experience that locally we have to take this responsibility of our water supply reliability on ourselves. We can't expect anybody to come rushing in here to save us. We have to be willing, and I know we are, to move forward and get some of these plans in place. And we probably need to do it while the drought is still fresh in everybody's mind, because
Exactly.
Glenn will remind you, if we have 3 or 4 really wet years, everybody will forget about that picture behind you, Josh.
So we have a series of questions about wine and wine grapes and such, and I'll answer them because I, of course, as a wine grape grower, and more importantly, as someone who spent a good portion of his career studying frost and looking for options besides sprinklers, I can tell you why we grow wine. Why are we growing wine anyway? Because this is a damn great place to grow it, and we make really good wine out of Mendocino County. I've traveled the world. I've seen a lot of other places. We have really special conditions here that make wine exceptional. Our economy is built on it. It's historic. We've done it for since the 1860s. We know how to do it. It's part of our fabric, our culture, our heritage, and we're good at it. And we can sell it easily in the marketplace. Probably more important is the issue of why would we, what's the benefit to the community? Well, for every ton of Chardonnay that we sell, we get somewhere around $1,200 to a winery when we sell it. It's probably underpriced. It's probably worth more than that, but that's what we get paid. So when that's made into wine, by the time that it goes through the system of paying taxes of federal excise tax, state excise tax, state sales tax, we generate from that $1,200 of grapes almost $900 of taxes. So there's a pretty good return relative to what we're spending on water. The water issue is another good thing. So even with the frost protection, when grapes are pretty stingy with water. So in the typical situation when I was advising people in Ukiah Valley, do you have enough water to grow grapes? I would usually say you better have half an acre foot for irrigating the grapes, and you better have half an acre foot for frost protection. And that was 20 years ago when it used to freeze a little more regular than it does now. We'd expect about 10 frost nights, and now we're having more like around 3 or 4. So when you look at that, so let's suppose we have 1 acre foot to grow grapes, and that's really high. I mean, there's a lot of, like my own uses are much lower because of what I have and where I am. It's about probably half of that. So mostly I'm getting by with half an acre foot. But compare that with growing almonds in the Central Valley, which would be around 5 acre feet. Compare that with growing cotton in the Central Valley, which is around 3.5 to 4. Rice goes up to 7 acre feet. So the amount of water that we use to grow grapes to generate jobs, tax bases, and taxes is a pretty good return. It's a good investment with the limited water resources we have, with the limited arable agricultural land that we have in Mendocino County. It works out pretty well. Cannabis is also very controversial. Part of what's our biggest problem with cannabis right now is that it was set up to be an illegal industry, and we're trying to legalize it. So we probably have it in the wrong place. We have cannabis planted in a lot of places where we don't have enough water in the upper watersheds. It would be better if it was down being planted on flat agricultural land, and there's people who would like to grow it. Part of our new ordinance would allow that. It would reduce some of the environmental impacts that people are very, very concerned about. So anyway, these are some of the things that we're facing, and we're sort of running out of time. And I just want to thank everybody who participated in today. We'll continue with this as new developments come up. You'll be hearing from all of us, and I want to thank everyone in the executive office for helping. I want to thank Supervisor Hasjack for being my co-host. Sorry, I didn't let you speak so much, John. Next time it'll be your show, and I'll be the right one. and of course, thanks to Project Manager Josh Metz for being here, and we look forward to learning more as the drought unfolds, and hopefully coming up with good solutions to what are really pressing problems. And I assure you that the Board of Supervisors is gravely concerned on this, along with all of Mendocino County government, and we're doing what we're trying to find solutions. We're very, very serious about making things better.
And I'd just like to add, Supervisor McGorty, is that if people have questions, they can call the Drought Hotline at 234-6363 or email drought@mendocinocounty.org. So we welcome that kind of communication. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.